Hi everyone, I want to make a quick review video about irony. Welcome. I'm hoping that you know most of this information already and this will just be review for you. So let's get started looking at what is irony, its definition and uses. I've broken it down into three different types. We have the big general definition of irony is that it's a literary device used to add drama and sometimes humor to literature. Once you start picking up on irony, it can be humorous, and a lot of times it does add drama and extra layer of meaning to a text, whether that text is a book, a poem, a film. So the first type of irony that I want to look at is situational irony. And this is when actions have an effect that is opposite from what was intended, making the outcome contrary to what was expected. A lot of times you'll see situational irony in sitcoms. They're called situational comedies, sitcoms, because a lot of the humor comes out of actions that are intended for one purpose, but they result in something different from what was intended. I think of a film that I watched a long time ago, and at the moment the name escapes me, but there was a fire in a trash can, and someone who was actually training to be a firefighter wanted to help put that fire out, and so they grabbed a container of liquid without even thinking about what was in the container and threw it on the fire. But it was gasoline, and it caused this huge explosion from a little fire to a bigger fire, which was ironic because the man was training to be a firefighter, and instead of putting the fire out, he made it worse. So that's situational irony. And I'm sure that if you think about movies that you've watched or TV shows that you like or other books that you've read, you can come up with some examples of when someone's intended behavior, the intention behind the behavior, led to the opposite result of what was desired. Here are a couple of fun little cartoons that illustrate situational irony. And I like these one-frame cartoons because the message sits in the silence of the frame, right? So in this one, you've got someone swearing, and then you just have the name of the van, right? And you can see he's using a coat hanger to try to unlock his van, and it's ironic because the locksmith shouldn't be locking himself out of anything. But at least he has the skills to get back in, right? And then this one is ironic too. The adult person is scolding the girls, saying, "Stop fighting over the friendship bracelet. If it's a friendship bracelet, you should share and be happy and not, be coming to blows with each other." So more examples of situational irony. We also have verbal irony. Verbal irony is when a speaker says one thing, but may intentionally mean something else. Verbal irony can also happen when a speaker is saying something, but the other characters interpret it differently, right? When the literal meaning is contrary to the intended meaning. It made me think of my brother Sam, who is really good at tripping, walks into walls that he's walking parallel to. And so one time Sam tripped up the stairs, and I remember laughing, saying, "Oh, Sam, that's graceful." So no, it's not graceful. Sam is not necessarily the most graceful person. And so it was ironic that I would call his movement up the stairs graceful when it wasn't. This is different from sarcasm, though, and I think we'll take a little aside here so that we can take a moment to look at sarcasm. They operate somewhat in the same way, but their intentions are very different. So in irony, the opposite is said, and sometimes the speaker isn't aware that what they're saying is opposite. Sometimes the speaker is aware that what they are saying is opposite, and they're doing that to kind of show contrast. Sarcasm, on the other hand, is saying or writing the opposite of what is meant, but the intention of sarcasm is to inflict pain on someone. Okay, so if I didn't like my brother Sam and he tripped, and in a very nasty way, I told him how graceful he was. Oh, you're brilliant, Sam. That's so graceful. And my intention is to hurt his feelings. That's sarcasm. When Sam and I are in on the joke together, and sometimes he'll say it. He's like, oh, geez, that was graceful, wasn't it? As he's tripping up the stairs. So saying the opposite of what is intended is ironic. Whereas if the intent is just to inflict pain, to hurt someone else, then it's sarcasm. Irony good, sarcasm mean. Dramatic irony is, it says dramatic irony, but it can happen in movies, it can happen in books, it can happen in poetry, and that is not just plays. So when words and actions possess meaning that the listeners know, but the speaker and the speaker's audience do not. And I have an example of this for you from Romeo and Juliet. Hopefully you can remember all the way back to 9th grade. And remember in Romeo and Juliet, she has taken the poison, they've buried her in the crypt, and Romeo comes storming in, and he sees his dead Juliet lying there. And he looks at her and he says, oh my goodness, you look so alive. Death hasn't stolen your beauty. He doesn't know that she really is alive, but we, the audience members, we know. And that dramatic irony is what adds to the drama of that moment, that adds to that tension of that moment. Another example from Romeo and Juliet is when Mercutio and Tybalt were sword fighting and Romeo got in the way. And the audience, we know Mercutio has been stabbed and Romeo doesn't. And Mercutio says to Romeo, look for me tomorrow and you will find me a grave man. Now the word grave, if you remember back to 9th grade, that conversation about this speech, grave means serious. And Mercutio is a character in this play who doesn't behave in a serious way. And so when he says, you will find me a grave man, his friends think, dude, you're never going to be serious. What are you talking about? And they're laughing. But grave, as we know, also means a place where we bury the dead. And so Mercutio is telling Romeo and his friends, look for me tomorrow and you will find me 6 feet under in the ground, dead. And so that little bit of irony adds to the tension because we know, oh my gosh, get him some help. Someone get a doctor, try to save his life. And instead they're standing around laughing. And so that's another example of dramatic irony. And if you take time and you think about movies or TV shows or other books that you've read, you will probably be able to come up with some examples of dramatic irony. Okay, so this is that quick review on what is irony. And so as we look at in the catbird seat, we are going to be looking for how that story is ironic. What are the elements in that short story that are ironic, that add to that tension, that add to the drama? Maybe things we know that the characters don't know, or things that are said that the opposite is implied. Okay. All right. So that is irony.